Welcome to the deep dive. Look, we're not here today to just, pat corporations on the back for
No,
trying.
no, definitely not.
We're diving into diversity, equity, and inclusion. DEI. It's a massive industry, billions spent.
Huge.
And we have to ask the really uncomfortable question, maybe the elephant in the room. Is all this DEI stuff actually changing anything fundamental? Or is it just the best corporate camouflage ever invented?
Right, like an incredibly expensive way to look like you're fixing things,
Yeah.
while the real power dynamics, they don't budge.
Yeah,
Love
exactly.
that.
Because you add it all up, the workshops, the consultants, these shiny
Oh,
reports,
yeah, the
the
reports.
sheer amount of money poured into it, you have to wonder, what's the actual difference on the ground? Are we just confusing all this activity with real progress?
It's a fair question, a necessary one.
So take a hard look, you listening right now. Think about your own workplace. Imagine all the DEI programs, poof, gone tomorrow.
Okay.
Would your day-to-day experience really shift? Would decisions get made differently? Would those, invisible barriers suddenly fall? If the answer isn't a clear, immediate yes, then what are we really buying with all this investment? Comfort, good PR.
Or just ticking a box.
That's silence if you're feeling it.
Yeah.
It can be pretty loud, can it?
And it speaks to that deeper thing, doesn't it? The intent. Are these things really meant to tear down the old structures? Or just manage the appearance of trying?
Like Nietzsche might ask, is this genuine justice? Or just, looking good for the crowd?
Following the herd morality, yeah.
You see it everywhere at company career pages. Perfect mosaic of smiling, diverse faces.
Oh, yes.
Social media, flooded with hashtag inclusion and celebrations. But then you peek behind the curtain.
Into the actual boardrooms.
Yeah, or look at who gets promoted, what the pay scales really are, and, well, often the picture looks starkly different.
Worlds apart sometimes.
So are we just swapping symbols for substance, celebrating the picture while ignoring who actually holds the paintbrush?
That's the danger. Because real DEI, true DEI, isn't just who's in the photo. It's about whose voice matters, whose ideas get taken seriously, who actually gets to shape where the company's going, especially the voices that maybe challenge things a bit.
Not just the easy ones.
Definitely not. Moving beyond just ticking boxes to actual empowerment.
Which brings us to those annual DEI reports. They're like monuments, aren't they?
Carefully constructed monuments, yeah.
Uplifting stories, graphs always pointing up. Could they just be like really sophisticated illusions?
Pretty narratives designed to make everyone feel good.
And maybe distract from what's really going on? Like what uncomfortable stuff is buried deep in the footnotes or just left out entirely?
Often the most telling numbers are the ones not in the summary. Attrition rates for diverse hires. How long it really takes them to get promoted compared to others. The subtle stuff in performance reviews.
The stuff that doesn't look good on the slide deck.
Exactly. Like you might say, you got to look at the organization's shadow to really understand it.
I remember a senior exec telling me once, totally offhand, like it was nothing. Oh, we always make sure there's a diverse slate for the big jobs. It's just good backed it out. And then he kind of winked.
Wow. Just wow.
Yeah. It wasn't about finding the absolute best person you could tell. It was pure optics management. Is that what DEI has become for some, a performance?
And that just shows the flaw, right?
Yeah.
When it's about looking good, not being good. The motivation changes everything.
If it's just for show.
Then real change is always going to be secondary, isn't it?
So let's follow the money. Billions globally flowing into DEI. Where's it actually landing?
Good question.
Is it funding things that really break down those old boys clubs, those systemic barriers, or is it mostly paying for, I don't know, consultants and training sessions, like a really pricey insurance policy against bad PR?
Yeah, or lawsuits. Where the budget goes tells you the real priorities. Is the big money aimed at fixing the system?
Or just making the company look fixed?
Right. Giving the best PR, bang for the buck, maybe. Protecting legally. It's a dilemma. Are we funding real solutions or just the appearance of solutions?
You know that saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions? Makes me think of mandatory unconscious bias training. We all sit through it, right? Maybe learn some new jargon.
Check the box.
But does it actually change how people behave day to day? Or is it just a ritual, something for the compliance department? Does knowing about bias automatically stop it?
Well, awareness is a start, I guess, but real change. That takes way more. Accountability, actually challenging habits.
Not just a 90-minute webinar.
Exactly. You can't fix deep, complex stuff with a quick training fix. It just creates this false sense of Okay, we dealt with that.
It wasn't that long ago, companies just put equal opportunity employer at the bottom of job ads. Simple statement.
Yep, straightforward.
Now, we've got this massive, sprawling, multi-billion-dollar DEI industrial complex. Consultants, departments, chief diversity officers.
Huge.
Has all this growth, all this money and structure actually moved the needle on fairness? Or have we just built a much more elaborate stage for the same old show?
It looks like progress because there's so much activity. But you got to keep asking, is this getting to the root causes
Or is it just fancy band-aids?
on wounds that need surgery?
Yeah, think about this. A company makes a huge deal about a diverse hire. Big announcement, press release, internal memos.
The whole song and dance.
But then, maybe a year, 2 years later, that same person quietly leaves. You hear about it through the grapevine.
Happens all the time.
What does that tell you about the inclusive culture they were promised? Were they hired to be in the picture but not actually part of the action?
That revolving door,
Mm-hmm.
it's a massive red flag. Shows the gap between just attracting diversity and actually including people.
Mm-hmm.
Making an environment where they feel valued, respected,
And can actually succeed.
and have a fair shot, yeah.
We see companies making these bold DEI statements, appointing chief diversity officers.
Which looks great on paper.
But is it always real commitment? Or could it sometimes be, really clever performative allyship, a way to buff the corporate halo without doing the hard, messy work?
Having a CDO and saying the right things, it's necessary, sure, but it's not enough. Does that person have real power, real resources? Does the company actually want them to shake things up?
Or are they just a figurehead?
Could be.
Okay, here's a stark choice for you. Imagine a company has $1 million. Option A, launch a dazzling DEI marketing campaign. Show the world how progressive they are.
Okay, big splash.
Option B, quietly, no fanfare, use that money to fix a pay gap that's hitting marginalized employees hardest.
Internal fix, no external applause.
Which one do you think reveals their true values?
Yeah, that choice between looking good outside and being fair inside. It's pretty telling. Real commitment often means doing the right thing even when no one's clapping.
Those corporate diversity reports, they always seem so relentlessly upbeat, don't they?
Oh yeah, all wins, all progress.
But what about the inconvenient stuff, the data that doesn't fit the happy narrative? Who really holds the power? Who gets promoted? Who feels like they actually belong? Where do those stories go?
You have to dig deeper than the curated story they're selling. Look at the detailed data, the trends over time.
And listen to people's actual experiences.
Absolutely. The real story of inclusion or exclusion is usually in the details they gloss over or just plain omit. What aren't they telling you?
When a company sets its DEI budget, what's the main goal? Is it really to break down those systemic barriers?
Or is it just about staying legal?
Achieving some measurable targets for certain groups? Or is it maybe simpler? A way to keep critics quiet, keep the boat steady, appeasement?
Following the money again. It shows you what they really care about. Are the dollars going to the root causes or just managing symptoms and reducing risk?
Look, I believe in fairness, equal opportunity. I really do.
Me too.
But I just can't shake this nagging feeling, this suspicion that the whole DEI industry as it exists now might be more invested in the problem itself than in finding solutions that actually work, solutions that might even disrupt things.
Is that cynicism talking?
Maybe. Or maybe it's just looking realistically at a multi-billion-dollar business.
Well, a bit of healthy skepticism is probably wise with any massive industry, right? You always have to ask if the goals match the outcomes, if the incentives are actually pushing towards real equity.
I had an HR exec admit to me once, totally off the record,
Yeah?
said our DEI targets, they're aspirational. That was the word. Mostly for the shareholder reports. Keep the activists quiet. The way they said it, just pure resignation.
Wow. That tells you everything, doesn't it? That disconnect. If it's just a performance for outsiders.
Then how can it possibly drive real change inside?
It can't. It's compromised from the start.
Sometimes it feels like companies are trying to slap DEI stickers on a fundamentally broken machine.
Right.
No amount of bias training or, affinity groups can fix a culture that's rotten at the core. You can't just sprinkle some fairness glitter on top of a toxic dump and call it clean.
Exactly. Systemic problems need systemic solutions. You have to change the culture, how leaders are held accountable, how decisions get made. It goes way beyond just surface stuff.
And then there's what I call LinkedIn DEI.
Oh, I know what you mean.
The endless feed of perfect photos, diverse teams smiling, articles about how amazing their inclusive culture is. It feels like performance art.
Totally curated.
A highlight reel that has almost nothing to do with who actually calls the shots in most of those places.
Yeah, that slick image versus the reality. You gotta look past the post and see what's actually happening at all levels.
So let me ask this, maybe directly to the HR folks, the DEI consultants, the employees listening who see this stuff.
Go for it.
Have you ever found yourself pushing a DEI program that deep down you knew wasn't really going to move the needle? What compromises did you make? How did you justify it to yourself? What was the cost of just staying quiet?
That's a tough self-reflection. Are we, and maybe without meaning to, propping up systems that aren't really fair? What's our own role in this?
Picture this. A company wins all the DEI awards. They're praised everywhere for being so inclusive.
The gold standard, supposedly.
But internally, anonymous employee reviews talk about discrimination, a toxic environment for anyone different. Which story is true?
Or it could both be true somehow. A brilliant performance covering up a really ugly reality.
That's the unsettling part, isn't it? That those two things can exist side by side. Shows why you can't just trust the awards.
You have to listen to the people inside.
Yep.
Their experience is the real measure.
Okay, here's a counterintuitive thought, though. What if some of these well-meaning DEI policies actually backfire?
How so?
What if they create resentment, division? What if they end up hurting the very people they're supposed to help by creating this illusion of progress so the deeper issues never get addressed?
It's possible. Any big change can have unexpected side effects. That's why you constantly need to check, get feedback, and be willing to adjust if something isn't working or is causing harm.
Let's just be blunt here. A lot of companies seem to care more about looking inclusive than doing the hard, uncomfortable work of being fair.
Yeah.
They'd rather throw a big diversity celebration event than actually confront the biases baked into their promotion system. One gets good press, the other.
The other requires real, potentially painful change.
Right. The comfort of the performance can be really tempting. Easier than tearing things down and rebuilding.
Absolutely. True equity often means challenging the status quo, the established power, and that's inherently disruptive.
So many employees see the problems with their company's DEI efforts. They talk about it quietly, right? In hushed tones, private messages.
Sure, they vent to each other.
But then comes the all-hands meeting, the town hall, and they just nod along, collect the paycheck, hope someone else fixes it. That silence, that comfortable silence of what is it? Fear, cynicism, just giving up.
It could be self-preservation, definitely, but it also lets the problems continue. Real change usually needs people to find their voice, speak up, even when it's risky.
Okay, here's a twist for you. What if corporate DEI, the way it mostly works now, isn't really about progress at all?
Who is it then?
What if it's become like a modern ritual, a kind of corporate sacrifice to keep the public happy, keep regulators away, stop lawsuits? What if it's just a symptom of the problem, not the cure? A way to manage dissent instead of fixing the inequality?
That's a pretty cynical take. Most Machiavellian, the idea that it's a control mechanism.
Could it be? In some cases. Controlling the story around diversity, rather than actually changing who has the power.
What if all those carefully planned DEI programs are actually designed to manage diversity? To smooth out the rough edges, keep things comfortable, control the narrative?
Instead of truly unleashing the power of different perspectives, which might actually shake things up. Change who gets heard, who gets promoted, who feels like they truly belong.
Yeah, focusing on managing diversity can definitely get in the way of valuing it, leveraging those unique viewpoints that people bring.
Your company, maybe the one you work for, probably thinks it's doing pretty well on DEI. They'll point to the budget, the programs, maybe some awards.
The usual metrics.
But what about the fact that leadership still looks the same as it did 10 years ago? What about the quiet exodus of talented people from underrepresented groups? Is there a kind of comfortable delusion going on? A collective agreement not to see the reality?
Yeah, the metrics chosen often create this story of success, even if people's lived experience is totally different. It's like organizational cognitive dissonance.
All right, here's maybe a mic drop moment for you.
Okay, let's hear it.
The most expensive DEI program isn't the one with the biggest budget. It's the one that changes absolutely nothing, except the company's website and the executive's LinkedIn profiles.
Oof, yeah, that hits hard. Because it's true, you can't measure impact just by how much you spend.
Right.
It's about real shifts in culture, real fairness for everyone.
So let's loop back to that first uncomfortable question we started with.
Okay.
If all the DEI initiatives, all the consultants, all the departments, if they all just vanish tomorrow, Would the actual bottom line, the profit of most big companies even notice?
Hmm.
Or would the main people affected be the consultants looking for new gigs and the HR folks needing a new specialty?
That thought experiment really forces the issue, doesn't it? How fundamental is DEI to business success right now? Is it essential? Or is it more like corporate window dressing?
If this conversation is making anyone in HR listening feel a bit squirmy, or if it's making you look at your own workplace differently,
Good.
maybe it should. Share this deep dive. Send it to a CEO, a board member, whoever holds the purse strings and has the power to ask, where is this money really going and what are we actually getting for it?
Having these tough conversations inside organizations, that's absolutely crucial if we want to get past the performance and towards something real.
What if your company's big commitment to diversity isn't really coming from some deep moral conviction?
What then?
What if it's mostly driven by cold, hard fear, fear of getting sued, fear of bad press, fear of activist investors making trouble? Is it belief or just smart risk management wearing a social justice hat?
The why behind it definitely matters. It shapes how authentic it is, how effective it can be.
Which do you think is worse? A company being totally honest, saying, look, we're struggling with DEI, we've got a long way to go, here are our problems.
Okay, painful honesty.
Or a company putting out those perfect polished reports, projecting this image of amazing success when everyone inside knows it's mostly BS.
I'd say the fake success is worse. Honesty, even when it's uncomfortable, is the only way you can actually start to fix things. Pretending just lets the problems fester.
You know, sometimes implementing DEI feels like installing mandatory software updates.
Huh. Okay, I see where you're going.
It's inconvenient, maybe a bit buggy, people complain, but it rarely, if ever, changes the fundamental operating system of the company culture. We just click agree and hope for the best, but don't really expect much.
That's a great analogy. It captures that superficial, sort of transactional feeling some DEI efforts have.
Yeah.
No deep integration, no real staying power.
Imagine looking a talented employee, someone from an underrepresented background, in the eye every day. You see their initial excitement just fade because that inclusive culture you brag about is just talk.
Yeah.
Can you really stand up on stage, accept a DEI award, and feel good about it, knowing that?
The human cost of faking it.
Yeah.
It's huge. You lose trust, people get disillusioned, the damage is real and lasts a long time.
Okay, listeners, try this. List the buzzwords your company throws around. Belonging, psychological safety, allyship.
All the usual suspects.
Now, be honest with yourself. What specific, uncomfortable truths about unfairness, about exclusion, are those nice words actually covering up? What tough conversations are being skillfully avoided?
Yeah, the jargon can definitely become a smokescreen. Hides the lack of real action, real accountability. Got to get past the buzzwords to what people are actually experiencing.
Your company's DEI reports, they're so positive, right?
Yeah.
So carefully curated, full of success stories. Maybe nobody outside, maybe even nobody inside, really understands the true, complex, often painful reality of inclusion there.
That lack of real transparency, that unwillingness to talk about the struggles, it kills progress. You need openness, even about the failures, to build trust and actually change.
I heard from an employee once at a company famous for its DEI. She said, my boss never said anything overtly racist or sexist. He just consistently ignored my ideas, made sure I wasn't in the key meetings, slowly erased me, politely.
Death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Exactly. That subtle, insidious stuff. It's so damaging and often completely missed by the big, broad DEI programs.
Recognizing and tackling those microaggressions, those hidden biases, that's critical. It's not just about the big, obvious metrics.
So what's the real cost, moral and financial, of celebrating the easy wins, hitting the hiring numbers, while the company culture quietly pushes out anyone who doesn't fit the mold? You're paying for exclusion, slowly but surely, while pretending you're making progress.
Yeah, focusing only on what's easy to count can make you miss the whole point. Inclusion is about experience belonging, safety, fairness, not just numbers on a spreadsheet.
You might genuinely think your company cares about equity. Great. Good start. But does it have the guts to publicly, openly challenge its most powerful, highest paid executives on their hiring, their promotion track records, their own biases? Or is DEI mostly something for middle managers and HR to worry about?
Equity needs accountability right at the very top.
Yeah.
If the leaders aren't under the same scrutiny, how much can really change?
You don't need some cartoon villain CEO twisting his mustache to have a totally failed DEI strategy.
Yeah.
Often all it takes is performative, surface-level stuff combined with leaders who are just profoundly apathetic, conflict avoidant. That's harm by inaction, not malice.
Lack of real leadership engagement. It tanks even the best intentions. Passive support isn't enough. You need active champions.
And who even decides what DEI success looks like anyway? Is it the consultants selling the next big thing?
Or the execs wanting good PR.
Shouldn't it be the employees living it every day, especially those most affected by inequality, whose view really matters most?
Success has to be defined by the experiences of the people it's supposed to help.
Yeah.
Employee feedback, their lived reality, that's the crucial metric, often ignored for easier numbers.
I used to think any company doing anything on DEI was making progress. Better than nothing, right?
A common thought.
Now, I think many organizations and the people in them are just addicted. Addicted to the look of action, the performance of caring. It feels better than facing the messy, hard, often unrewarding reality of making actual change. It's organizational self-deception.
That performance trap. It creates a false sense of achievement, distracts from the deep hard work needed for real, lasting change.
A former head of DEI, big company, told me once after maybe one too many drinks.
The truth comes out.
Said the real tragedy isn't that DEI often doesn't work, it's how passionately, how defensively they justify the empty numbers, presenting them like real progress.
Yeah.
A chilling kind of denial.
That rationalization, it's a huge barrier. Stops people from seeing the real problems and actually fixing them. Creates a culture where looking good matters more than doing good.
There's probably a number buried deep in your company's full DEI data set. The one that never sees the light of day in the glossy summary.
Hidden in an appendix somewhere.
Or sliced so thin you can't see the real pattern. Is that number whispering the truth? Or has the corporate PR machine just drowned it out?
Yeah, digging into the disaggregated data, the stuff hidden under the top-line numbers.
Yeah.
That often reveals the real story.
Has your company ever launched a big DEI push mainly because they got bad press, or faced a social media storm, or feared losing customers?
Be honest now.
Was it driven by a real belief in equity? Or was it just crisis management? Reputation repair 101.
Reactive stuff, while maybe needed sometimes, often lacks the deep commitment for real change. True progress needs to be proactive, baked into the company's DNA.
Maybe. Just maybe. There's no such thing as a truly successful DEI program, not one that's done, especially in systems built on centuries of imbalance.
So what can we hope for?
Perhaps just varying degrees of damage control, different levels of trying to mitigate the harm. Is that too pessimistic? Or just honest about the scale of the challenge?
Recognizing its ongoing work, that it's complex, that you never really arrive. That's probably key to setting realistic goals and fostering that culture of always learning, always trying to do better.
Maybe your company's DEI program isn't the hero it's made out to be, but maybe it's not a total cynical scam either. Maybe for most employees, it's just become background noise.
Like Muzak in the elevator.
Yeah. Another corporate thing humming along, but pretty useless for the daily fight for respect, opportunity, basic dignity.
When DEI doesn't connect to people's actual daily lives, it just becomes irrelevant.
Right.
Leads to cynicism, people tuning out.
Okay, final brutal choice for a company. Be seen publicly as diverse and equitable, maintain that perfect image. Or actually be equitable in pay, promotions, power, even if the journey is messy, difficult, and doesn't generate great PR.
Which path do they really invest in?
Which identity wins out, perception or reality?
That choice really cuts to the core of a company's values, doesn't it?
A company, like a person, can't really move past the performance, the DEI theater, until it admits that, yeah, maybe it kind of liked the easy praise it got for doing the bare minimum.
Like the awards, the good press.
Even if deep down they knew not much had really changed, that's a tough mirror to look into for any organization.
Yeah, that's self-reflection, admitting past shortcuts.
Yeah.
It's essential if you want to break free from just performing and actually commit to real change.
Here's a tough hypothetical for the leadership team listening. Your absolute top performer bringing in huge money is also the source of multiple, credible, really concerning DEI complaints. What does the company actually do?
Profit versus people. Stated values versus star player.
Does it protect the rainmaker? Or does it stand by its people and its DEI promises? The answer, or the way they dodge the question, tells you everything about their real character.
Those moments are the ultimate test. They reveal the true priorities, and everyone is watching how they're handled.
Your company's silence on the obvious pay gaps, on why the leadership team still looks so uniform, on why diverse talent keeps heading for the door. That silence It's not neutral.
No, it's taking a side.
It's either cowardice or calculated indifference dressed up in professional jargon. It's a billion-dollar DEI budget papering over a massive lack of will to face hard truths.
Silence on the big stuff just maintains the status quo. It undermines any claim to really care about DEI. You have to talk about the hard things.
When people look back, say 20 years from now, and ask what your company really did during this time, this supposed era of DEI awakening,
Yeah.
what will the real records show? Beyond the shiny brochures, what uncomfortable truths about the gap between the talk and the walk will come out?
Thinking about that legacy,
Yeah.
it can be a powerful motivator to be more authentic now. What story will history tell?
Maybe a truly inclusive company isn't one that claims perfection, doesn't pretend to have all the answers.
What is it then?
Maybe it's one that's never satisfied, always questioning itself, its impact, its own biases. Maybe true inclusion is embracing the humility of knowing you'll never fully arrive, that it's constant learning, constant adapting.
That culture of continuous learning, always questioning, being willing to be challenged. That's vital for any real progress. Complacency is definitely the enemy of equity.
Think about all those DEI reports being filed away, showcasing progress that insiders know is paper thin, or maybe just made up. The machine grinds on. Budgets get renewed. People get promoted for overseeing it.
And the charade continues.
That's the insidious horror, isn't it? The normalization of the performance, accepting the show as if it's reality.
When the performance becomes routine, it creates this dangerous gap between what people think is happening and what's really happening. Breeds cynicism, kills trust.
Let's just be brutally honest for a second. Most companies, most people in companies, are mainly just trying to get through the DEI minefield without blowing up.
Avoiding lawsuits, avoiding bad press.
It's often just risk mitigation wearing a halo. Can we just admit that much?
Acknowledging that motivation, the risk management part, gives a clearer picture. It makes you ask, is the focus just on preventing bad things or actively building good things?
Remember where we started. Is DEI working? Is it delivering real results?
The big question.
The real, maybe uncomfortable answer is, it completely depends. Depends who you ask, what their agenda is. And, crucially, what numbers they're choosing not to show you, what stories they're choosing not to tell.
That subjectivity highlights why we need clear, measurable outcomes focused on employees, plus real transparency and honest self-assessment.
A company isn't its mission statement about inclusion. It's not just its worst scandal either.
So what is it?
A company is the distance.
Yeah.
The often huge, uncomfortable distance between that lofty promise and the actual everyday lived reality of its people. That gap, that's the truth.
That gap says more about the real character and values than any press release ever could.
If this whole deep dive has left you feeling uneasy about your own workplace, maybe your own role, let it sink in.
Listen again. Sometimes the second time, the questions hit differently, closer to a truth that maybe needs you to do something.
Yeah, reflecting again can bring clarity, maybe a sense of urgency.
If this conversation voiced even some of your own quiet frustrations, your despair about corporate DEI right now, share it.
Get it out there.
Send it to someone with power, the decision maker, the budget holder, someone who needs to face these realities, assuming they have the guts to actually listen.
Sharing these ideas, starting these dialogues, it's how you push for real evaluation and hopefully real action.
This has been The Deep Dive. We didn't give you easy answers on whether DEI is a multi-billion-dollar mirage or some kind of flawed savior.
No easy answers today.
We just asked the hard questions. Why so much money? Why so many promises? And what do you, gut level, really believe the results are? Question everything.
Absolutely. The path to real equity demands that relentless questioning, that honesty, and the courage to challenge how things are.